Okay, we can go ahead and call the second edition of the workshop for superintendent interviews to order. And Dr. Romano, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you for enduring this speedy process with us. We will decide something by July or something. No, I'm not. As you're very well aware of, this is probably the most important decision a school board will ever make. It's extremely important to the five of us, as probably evidenced by the time and diligence we put into this process. Very important to the 7,000 employees of the school district. It's very important to the 60,000 children that attend here and the 400,000 residents of the county. So there's a lot of people watching, and we're doing our best we can to have a good, diligent process and find the best candidate we can. Good news for you is we're nearing the end of this process, and for us too. Very, very exciting times in Osceola County. There's a lot of different things going on in the school district and our community itself. For one, we've got the county is in the process of developing a industrial site across the street, which would be high-tech manufacturing. They're putting over $100 million into this. And it's really meant to be a game changer for the county. We've got tourism related industry is obviously our biggest industry, followed by agriculture. And the intent is that this would up our wage base and everything else that would go with it. So
It's a great thing for the county.
right, it's absolutely a great thing. The most important part for the success of that project is our public education system. We've got to be a leader in Central Florida to attract the businesses we need to fill that site. We've got to be able to provide jobs for that site, and we've got to be able to provide homes and places for people to live that want to live and work in that type of environment. So a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunity for this school district right now that we're facing near and in the immediate future. We're glad you're here. We're looking forward to getting to know you today and tomorrow. And before we get started, I'm going to introduce several people in the room. Dana Schaefer, who's in the back, whose group has had, and you know Kim, obviously, who works with Dana, who has performed all the logistics and got us organized and you organized and everybody else. But any questions you have the next day and a half, certainly Kim or Dana, they've done an unbelievable job for us. Also, we have our consultants from the Florida School Board Association, who you probably know all of them, but Andrea, Dr. Bill Vogel, and John Reichert are here with us to help us through this process. We have April Jackson, who is the president of our OCEA group here, and our school board attorney, Larry Brown. He's a very small guy.
He's coming back.
He'll actually be back.
Cut out him.
Yeah, he'll be back in a few minutes, so when he comes in, you know who it is. And just so you know, we have our school board members, Jay Wheeler, Kelvin Soto, Tim Weishire, Ricky Booth, and myself. What we're going to do now is go through, we've got about 10 questions that we've all decided on. We're going to go through those one at a time, ask you those questions, give you up to 5 minutes to answer it. Andrea is our timekeeper. Andrea, tell her how you're going to keep.
Well, it's not hard and fast. I
Right,
will say
yeah,
that.
yeah, we've got some flexibility, but.
So this is just really to help you. It doesn't mean that when you see the 30-second sign, that means you have to really cut it out. And I'm not going to be putting the stop sign down until it's really beyond.
If you're getting near the end, just go ahead and
but
kind of
just to
wrap
try
it
to
up.
help keep things moving is all this is for.
And what we found is Kelvin in the last one, he asked a lot of multi-part questions, which took a long time to answer.
Mr. Soto.
So if we get to those, it may take a few minutes, and we're a little flexible. We just want, the main reason for the 5 minutes is to fit you within the hour and a half. At the end of those questions, we'll go and each one of us will have an opportunity for just a random follow-up question, something you may have said that spurred some interest or something like that. Let's see, what else do I need to mention? We're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do, actually, before we get to your question, we're going to allow you a little opportunity to introduce yourself to us, and again, kind of keep that to 3-5 minutes. Just tell us a little bit about anything you'd like to say, anything you'd like to ask. Even before that, do you have any questions about the process or where we're at? or-
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. I think you've explained it clearly. Thank
Okay.
you.
With that, I will turn it over to you, and after you give your little introduction, we will let Mr. Soto will start with the first question, and we'll work our way around the room.
Okay.
You want me to read the opening question?
Hmm?
Want me to read this opening?
No, let her go ahead and do, if you want to give us a little introduction on
Certainly,
yourself? Sure.
certainly.
First, and then we'll get in.
Oh, okay.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be able to interview for the position, and also thank you for the process that you've put in place. I've been really impressed, and I've shared that with the FSBA consultants, but you know, you didn't have to do this, and I think, you know, you're trying to make a really good decision, a really important decision for your district, school district, and your community. So I really commend you on taking the time to do that. I think it helped with Superintendent Luciano allowing, you know, her notification in time to be able to do that. So I just commend you for doing that. I think it's really says something about you as a board. It's really nice to finally be here in the room with you because I've watched you on TV a lot, just to try to understand, you know, your work and what you're working on here in Osceola County. So let me kind of transition into who I am so you can learn a little bit about me. So, of course, you know, I'm Lori Romano, for those people who are watching. I'm currently serving as superintendent in Hernando County Schools. And a little bit about my background: I'm a Florida native, born and raised, grew up, born in Fort Lauderdale, and that was at a time when there were still lots of orange groves there, and my parents then moved to Jupiter, where I graduated high school from Jupiter High School. Went out of state, got a leadership scholarship to go to college. My parents did not have a lot of funding to be able to send me to college. That was a blessing to our family to be able to go to Troy State University in Alabama. And then from there, I got my first teaching job in Montgomery, Alabama, at an inner city school. And it was the best first year of teaching I ever could have possibly had. I learned a tremendous amount. And that's what prompted me to go on and get my master's degree in guidance and counseling at Auburn University at Montgomery. I was teaching in the inner city there, and they had a campus there. And the reason why I did that, I've never served as a guidance counselor, but I'm really passionate about their work because I was working with students who were experiencing at the middle school level a lot of family issues around drug addiction and abuse and foster care and homelessness. And so that really helped me. And then from there, I went to Virginia Tech to get my PhD in special education administration. And I was trained at Troy State University to be an elementary and a special ed teacher. I've been a teacher, both elementary and special ed. I've taught a little bit of gifted education, which has been interesting. I've also served as a school-based administrator and a district level administrator. While I was in my doctoral program, the person who was running my program, she had worked as a bureau chief at the Department of Education in Florida, and I was really interested. Florida's my home. I have a real passion for Florida. I'm a product of public education. I believe in it. And this job opened up at the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services at the Department of Education, and I applied and I obtained the job, and I worked for the Department of Education in Tallahassee. Had satellite offices at different parts of the state because I was focused on working with recruitment, development, preparation, and retention of teachers and special education staff in particular across the state. So I really wanted to have an understanding of all levels of the education field, including that state level perspective. So I did that for 9 years. I supported 9 regional partnerships at state universities across the state, and they were solely focused on that recruitment, development, preparation, and retention, and they were connected to school districts. So the work I had done as a teacher and a district level administrator, and then partnered with those preparation programs to really focus on how can we recruit people into the field of special education, speech language, occupational physical therapy, so on and so forth, special ed teachers, and what can we do to develop and retain them over time? And that was the connection to school districts that we made from those state universities, and then eventually partnering with some of the community colleges and state colleges. So from there, in terms of my career, I left the Department of Education. I met a wonderful man and got married and wanted to have Alexandra, who I now have, who's 6, and so I'm a mom. And I did that because I was doing a lot of traveling with the state, and I knew I needed to be grounded to raise a family. So I got a job as Director of Adult, Secondary, Community, and Virtual Education. Say that all together in one. In Martin County, A-rated school district. Those of you may know Stuart, Florida, well. It's a really nice area. And I did that for 3 years. And I worked in a system where I learned a lot about leadership and what not to do and what to do. And I really had a passion and desire to lead at the superintendent level. And I thought to myself, I'm going to apply for a superintendent position. I want to go and I want to experience what the interview was like and see what kind of questions. I hadn't interviewed at that level before, and I did that, and I obtained the position in Hernando County. Hernando County was, I was intentional about applying to Hernando County because the size of the district mirrored the size of the district in Hernando. They were 22,000 students in Hernando, and Martin County has almost 18,000 students. So there was that familiarity, and I knew that I could do that work. Well, when I went into that district as the superintendent, I learned a lot about how to create culture and bring people together to work as a team, and so we've really focused on that, and I think we'll probably get into some more of that as we progress through questions, so I won't go into a lot of details, but that's a little bit about myself. I have a husband, Tim, who is a special education teacher at the middle school level. He works with children with emotional and behavioral disorders, and that's pretty neat for us to share a profession. We keep each other real. He's a fantastic dad to our daughter Alexandra, who is now in 1st grade. And part of my desire to be able to lead was Alexandra was entering kindergarten. And so for me, it was about, what I want for her, I want for all kids, and how can I make that happen in a district on a really large scale? So we moved and we're living in Spring Hill, Florida. And so I tell you all of that about my background so you can kind of get a sense of who I am. I love the position of superintendent. I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about bringing people together to work as a team in a principle-centered kind of way. And that includes the board. I think the board sets the tone for the entire district along with the superintendent.
Good. Calvin, you want to lead us off?
If I may. I'm going to ask these questions, and every board member will go by, and then we'll do a second round as Mr. Thacker explained. What I would like for you, if whatever you like, you have the option of just taking whatever time you need to outline your answer.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you don't have to
Thank you.
right away, okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah, just.
Thank you.
And I can repeat the question if you need to as well, okay?
Okay.
And some questions will need repeating.
Okay.
That's fact.
Okay. They have like multiple parts.
Yes.
Okay. Pieces of parts.
Yeah, mine are gonna probably be the easiest ones to understand, but will require you to really think out your answer.
Okay.
The first question is, what is the role of public education in the United States today? And what do you see it in the future? How do you see it going in the future?
Okay.
That's the question.
I think that public education in the United States is about helping students to not only be academically prepared for this diverse and very global changing world that they're going to enter after graduation, but I also think it's about preparing them to be very grounded and resilient, to have the skills and abilities to life skills, if you will, that will sustain them. And those are things that we're just now, we've always, had this life skills sort of class, but it really is about, helping students to be able to be really good citizens in addition to their academic areas, and to have those emotional and social skills that really kind of grounds them, because that's a part of being a really good person and citizen. So I see public education as really contributing to that. I believe in public education very much. I think that public education is changing drastically. We're moving into a time period where it's becoming very privatized and very business oriented, and public school districts such as ourselves are having to realize that we were talking about this during lunch, we have to start marketing and thinking about how we can capture students in, and we have to make sure in doing that we stay really grounded to our principles that make us who we are as a community and as people. Because there's a lot of rich tradition that doesn't need to be lost in communities as we transform public education. It's a really difficult time period in education because of the movement towards privatization and having to really think about, I mean, educators, we haven't had to think about how we market ourselves to draw in students and why students would want to come to our district and to keep them here, because that maintains the FTE that we get to be able to run our schools. And most importantly, we believe that we have the best programs for children that serve the purpose of helping them to be college and career ready and advancing and being really good citizens, and then giving back and contributing back to the community. We want our students to graduate and come back here, especially if you're parents and you want your children to be able to do that. Did I answer all the parts?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can go as far as you want to go.
Okay. I'll go next. The next second question is, what strategies would you use to raise the academic achievement of students district-wide, and specifically address reading at the elementary level?
Okay. One of the things that we have learned after having our first failing school in our district and increasing that to a C in 1 year and almost 13 points away from a B. The principal would want, if she's watched, she'd want me to say that to you because she's very proud of that, as I am. And I think
So it was an F?
it was an F. We moved to a C, 13 points away from a B. So I have to say the caveat part.
A C++,
Hold on.
right?
Exactly. And if the simulation grades come out as they were presented to us, they will be a B this year. So we're pretty proud of that work. And so when I think about strategies to help student achievement, I don't just think about schools that are failing. I also think about, and you all are doing some of this, you're thinking about your high achievers as well, and really extending opportunities and building opportunities to take them as far as they can go. And so I'm going to talk specific about strategies, but before I do that, I think when you're a parent, all you want, when you send your child to school, what you want is you want to have the school take your child and do great things with them. You want them to care for them the way you do, and you want them to take them as far as they can take them, right? That's what we want. And so strategies specifically. Number one, you have to understand the demographic that you're serving, and you have to build people relationships with that demographic. You have to know those families. They have to trust the leader. I mean, everything rises and falls with leadership, right? So you have to have the right leader in place on those campuses. You have to then have not only the right leader, but an instructional leader who understands what they should be looking for in classrooms to make sure that the standards, the curriculum, the instruction that's taking place, and then those assessments that teachers are using through that cycle are all taking place in a really high quality way with fidelity. So that would be one of the strategies. Leadership, it would be around structuring the instructional environment, making sure teachers feel like they have support, that they have the resources that they need to teach. And then, structuring your district staff so that they are supporting those schools, and they're doing that through, I know you all do, we do walkthroughs, instructional walkthroughs, you have a similar structure here, and then not in an evaluative way, but giving feedback to be able to then say, these are the specific strategies you need to use to improve. We've done that, and we've seen really good results, because it's not only holds people accountable, but it helps them to grow and builds capacity in your people. So those would be some of the strategies that we would use, would be leadership, those instructional walkthroughs, having your principals and your administrators do walkthroughs on those campuses to give feedback to teachers on a very consistent basis. And then district level, district exists to be able to provide support to schools. I mean, that's why we exist. So those would be some of the strategies, and then holding people accountable for high expectations. And there's been a lot of hype around new standards, issues around new standards, and And I understand that because it's part of the change process, and we're shifting from the Sunshine State to the next generation to the new Florida standards. And but if you walk into classrooms today and you see what first graders are able to do and are doing, and how teachers are facilitating learning, I mean, it's powerful to see where kids are going in this time period. And so then specifically the reading, can you repeat the reading component of the question? I'm looking at you because you're the first.
Specifically address the reading at the elementary level.
Okay. One of the things that is something I'm very passionate about, and we've done a lot of work in this area, is early intervention and being able to really provide supports to children prior to entering into the school system. And there are barriers to that. Number one, how do you get access into those families? Do they want that support? How do you work with your child care providers to be able to ratchet that up so that it's a really strong system that then comes into? We have a great relationship with our Early Learning Coalition to be able to do that. So if you can strengthen those programs and those early intervening processes, that's going to help when they enter into the K system. And so when they enter into the K system, you have a pretty good idea based on screening documents where students are at. And there's a variety of screening tools to be able to do that. We have some teacher-created things that we use, and we also have some standardized types of tools that we use. But from those documents, you can tell if a child understands the sound symbol connection. Do they understand the letters? Can they put those together and blend those into words? And I'm kind of getting into my special education reading background because I worked with kids with reading disabilities. But then from there, ultimately, you want kids to have a high vocabulary and be able to read and then comprehend. Because even if they do all that and they can't comprehend it, the whole point of reading is comprehending. So when I think about structuring reading supports at the elementary level, I would ensure that we have a good connection with those early intervening resources, those early providers, the Early Learning Coalition. What would be great is to build a model pre-K center and really have some best practices, and then partner up with some of the state colleges or that have teacher prep programs so that you can really model some of those things. And we've had some initial conceptual conversations with our Early Learning Coalition around doing that work, just building one best practice model center to be able to do that. And then once they enter into the system, using those screening tools and then having that response to intervention process, the RTI process, in place so that you can intervene based on the students' individual needs that exist.
Good. Mr. Quasar?
Sir, well, first, if I heard you correctly, your husband's name is
Red.
Tim.
Yes.
So I want to commend you
Yes.
on picking a good husband.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And he's laughing hysterically if he's
Well,
watching.
good. Hi, Tim.
Yes. Tim, meet Tim.
Yeah, I'm going to move into business and finance, and I want to ask you to describe how you would ensure that there's a linkage between everything that we do with the strategic plan and how we monitor, control, and implement, and even create a budget for the school district. So how would you ensure that linkage is in place at all times?
Well, first of all, you have to have a really solid strategic plan. And we have a 5-year strategic plan that was in place when I went into the district. And we've worked from that, but we're just now beginning the process of, in fact, when I go back next week, I'm having my first community conversation around building the next strategic plan and starting to vision around that. So you've got to make sure that you work with your community and your stakeholders to create that vision to determine what the community is looking for as a part of the education system. What do you want for our graduates in our community, and making decisions about those as well as core beliefs. So once you have that strategic plan in place, and the strategic plan should really drive and guide all of the work that goes on. And historically in school districts, it's been my experience that that could be a document that kind of sits on the shelf, and it really shouldn't. So what we've done is we've used that document as a central document to guide our entire way of work. All of our board agenda items are tied to the strategic plan objectives. So what we can see is how are we allocating resources based on those strategic plan objectives, and then we report out on that. And We report out on that annually, and we also report out on that within different departments, if you will, and with schools more frequently. So we align every aspect of our way of work to the strategic plan. And I think one of the things that's important is thinking beyond just the 1 year and then continuously reporting back out. And so let me talk about the budget component of that, because your district is very similar to the district that I'm currently in terms of funding. We have limited funding, and
We have nothing.
exactly, it's limited funding, and we're starting to have to use the fund balance. Of course, our district has been for years, and I think you all are starting to have to use fund balance to be able to operate, and that's not a good place to be. So 2 things that we've done. We have looked at we have a budget advisory group, and off of that budget advisory group, and in that budget advisory group, the purpose of it is to review monthly statements to see where we're at with the budget and where do we spend our money and where can we cut back and how is it connected to the strategic plan, and are we placing our resources in the right place. There's kind of a subgroup off of that really looks at the budget through a different lens, a different model, and it's a business model. And so that's just now taking place, but I'm really excited about that because we have business partners that came together and said, let us look at the budget. First of all, they had to understand Florida financing, okay, which is somewhat difficult to understand or to explain, but once you understand it, you know it. And so they're doing that work. 2 other things. We have also, because 85% of school district budgets typically are salaries and benefits of people. And when that's the case, and you have a reduced budget, you don't want to cut positions. And Hernando County has not done that. They've stayed steadfast. They've cut a lot of other things, but they've, people have maintained jobs. And I think you all have done the same thing. But we're looking at our staffing plan and how we allocate resources to schools. And we're looking at developing and revising that into a needs-based model. So when you talk about equity across school sites, that's a really important document because it drives all of your allocations and your resource allocations to schools. So the staff are working on that. We've learned some processes for doing that from other school districts, but we're really excited about that will be in place for the next budget cycle. And the other thing that we do is we have a program evaluation protocol process in place. And that's key because the other part of your funding is programmatic. And you need a process that's continuous, that comes to the board as board members are making decisions about agenda items, programs in particular, to know, was it effective? Should we continue this? Should we put more money into it because we're getting a lot of good results from it? And so we have a process in place now, and that was one of our strategic plan objectives as well. The other thing we built in, and I hope I'm not unread yet, the other thing we've built in is we've built in some culture types of things into our strategic plan. So, your people are everything. This is a people business, and you have to have a team that's united. That includes the board and the superintendent that are moving forward, community, staff that are moving forward together for the ultimate purpose. And so we built in some things into the strategic plan around culture and recognition, communication components. And so linking all that stuff back to the budget is what we've done. And the board is able to see that on a pretty frequent basis. And we report out on the big overall strategic plan. In fact, we're getting ready to do that in February, the February board meeting. I always do a state of the district address in January, and then in February we report out on the strategic plan objectives in a very public way.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
Mr. Booth?
All right. Dr. Romano, thank you for being here today. My question is this: describe what you believe to be the ideal working relationship with the school board. How do we achieve it? How do we maintain it? And should we have an adversarial situation, or should you have an adversarial situation arise with a school board member? How would you go about resolving it?
I haven't had any of those ever. I'm totally being sarcastic.
We got it.
As the superintendent and the board, we set the expectations and we model for the entire district. So when I think about that, the way we communicate, the way we interact is going to be what happens out in the places for the people that we serve. So a couple of things that I've done and that I think are really important is I had 3 new board members come on in November. And it's sitting down. I meet with each individual board member, and that meeting looks different. Some people like to meet, some people like to talk by phone or whatever. And so you have to figure out different ways in which people communicate. But it's that flow of communication and then orienting new board members to the school district and to the way of work. And I developed a training module type of structure to be able to do that. The other thing is communicating with the board on a weekly basis in a more formal way. There's a Friday weekly that I send out, and I've used that in many positions I've been in. I found it to be very effective because we communicate. I mean, there's communication that all the time, and we're flooded with it. Email and text, all that, we're flooded with it. And so this Friday communication really is a way for board members to see on a weekly basis, these are things that you really need to pay attention to. Maybe something that's happening in the legislature that you really need to be, something that's happening in the community, some things that have happened. So and I color code them green. Those are things, pay attention to those. Yellow are sort of things that you need to really just read and consider and for future. And then on the horizon, all these dates and things that occurred, and I always do a points of pride because there's so many things that go on in the district. And a lot of times board members and superintendents, what we hear are the people that are not happy their child didn't get into a magnet school or the child that was left on a bus too long, or, I could go on and on. But that's okay, we problem solve those things. So when I think about a board superintendent relationship, number one, we have to be united. We have to be a team, and that takes a lot of work. It takes us getting to know each other, it takes building trust, and if we don't do that, it's going to hurt the community and it's going to hurt the school district. So it's a must. You're welcome.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Romano, welcome.
Thank you.
What do you feel is the single most important piece of data that will drive our district forward? Why? And how do you propose this data be used for district improvement? I'm going to ask it in parts?
Nope,
Okay.
nope, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
I don't think there is a single piece of data, Mr. Wheeler. I don't think there is a single piece of data that we can look at, and I think if we were to do that, we would be boxing ourselves into making decisions that were not well informed. So when I think about data that drives student achievement to really make this district better, I have to think about what our ultimate goals are. Where have we come together as a community and decided where we need to be? I mean, I can immediately think about things that the state holds us accountable for that I think are important, because publicly that's important to people. Grad rates, industry certifications, our reading and our math proficiency, our writing proficiency, our end of course exam rates, our attendance. I think about all of those things, but to say that there would be one single factor, I don't. My background tells me that anytime you base a decision on one single thing, you kind of box yourself in, and it hinders you from really thinking about improvement.
Okay,
So
you answer, so I appreciate the qualification. So getting to this third part then, relative to the pieces that you've identified, how do you propose this data be used for district improvement?
Oh, well, if we've made a decision as a board superintendent community that we want this in terms of our graduates and what we define education as this, then all of those things become a part of our strategic plan that drive our work, all of them. Do we believe that grad rate is important? By the way, congratulations on your grad rate. It is at 80%. That's pretty successful.
It's not an 81.
No
We can
satisfaction.
celebrate for 5 seconds and then we're moving on, because we got to get better. I know. I can be very competitive that way as well. I want an A school district, I want excellence and so on and so forth. So to answer your question, I think that all of those indicators, in addition to the things that we determine locally, which I think is really important, would drive our strategic plan and drive our way of work. And then the way you do that is you develop your action plans on what that looks like to be implemented, and then you monitor it, you progress monitor it, you report out on it publicly, because that's one thing is we have to communicate to the public about where we're at. We have to celebrate successes, we have to rebuild trust and faith in the public education system in a much different way than we have in the past. And I think we are ambassadors, the superintendent, the school board, our teachers, we're ambassadors for that, because ultimately it impacts children.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Soto?
Oh, my turn again.
We go in this really good order, you to me.
Bounce.
Next time I'll poke.
I'm getting my pen
Wanna keep
ready.
you
since
confused.
I'm just thinking about the question just a moment based on how you answered the last one. But here's the question as it's written. What is the single most important thing a superintendent does and why? Now, if I will be indulged, I would like for me, if you could put a little short answer, I want you to choose one. In other words, I know there's a lot of important things, but just one that you can go ahead and say, okay, let me raise this one above, even in a theoretical or philosophical sense. So I'll repeat the question. What is the single most important thing a superintendent does and why?
And I'm gonna answer with the answer that I feel strongly about, but also know that I still don't think there's one specific thing.
We know that.
The superintendent must stay 10 steps ahead and have the bar raised, even when people don't believe they can get there. And they have to model that along with the board. So for me, setting the expectation and staying really current and abreast of research and what's working, and that's probably the single most important thing. Now, what bothers me about saying that to you is people are really important in this business. If you were to ask me or my staff, my leadership style, and I was to define that for you, it would really be around servant leadership, a collaborator, a team builder. You have to have it. We've structured our district around the 7 habits of highly effective people and organizations. And the reason for that is it gives people a set of principles for which to function and how we treat each other. It's rolled into our customer service and shared decision-making process. So that answer about holding the bar really high, staying abreast and on the cutting edge and helping people to move in that direction, because I got to see what the future looks like. I got to try to envision that, and I do that a lot. Is absent of the people piece, and I wanted to clarify that because I think you can't have one without the other.
Okay. Describe your involvement with STEAM and the career-related opportunities that come with that, and how do you kind of integrate the teaching of it versus the practical part of getting either jobs or further education?
Okay, it's a great question, and I love the fact that you have your mobile lab and the funding that you got for that, and it's a national model. I mean, that's just a huge kudos for your school district, so congratulations on that. I really, really like the fact that you've included the arts in the STEAM model. We did that when I did work in Martin County as a director, and our Education Foundation supported that, and we did a couple different things that that we were pretty proud of. And first, what we did is we partnered with engineers, and we brought in engineers, and then other businesses. We replicated that model with other fields. But we brought in engineers, and we brought them into our algebra classes because our algebra scores were way down, and students were learning algebra concepts through learning about traffic patterns, for instance. And so there was this natural connection about learning. They didn't even know they were learning algebra because it was so exciting. So when you talk about embedding STEAM into the leveraging point is the curriculum. I mean, you have to see where it fits within your curriculum structure. And then partnering with your businesses, because businesses, which is key to this work as well, but businesses don't want to just give their money. It's not about that. They want to partner with us and do different things with us. And so it's how do we partner our business partners as faculty program and having them sit with teams of classroom teachers that may not have science at the elementary level as their background, and having them sit with scientists to prepare lessons together is a very powerful program. The last thing I'll say about STEAM is we have a whole new set of Florida standards, and they are pretty rigorous. I say that word, rigor. And they are very rigorous, but they also change the way that we teach in the classroom. And so your STEAM models, and my child right now is at a science, technology, and math integrated school, those pieces and parts should fit in and be embedded into the curriculum structures, giving students those experiences and mapping out those feeder programs that go from elementary, because what you don't want to do is provide something in isolation. When we talk about professional development that way, we talk about spray and pray, right? And we talk about it's ineffective spray and pray and pray that everybody got the professional development. But we want to make sure for children that when we're planning curriculum that they're not just getting one experience here. I mean, you start out that way, but you grow it so that there's this consistency and vertical alignment from one grade to the next. And ultimately, it leads to those career and technical education academies that give students industry certifications. It gives them experiences within the world that they may want to go into a job. And even if they're going to college, I always tell people think about vocational. Well, we're in a very we have biotech academies, and so those career academies are good for all kids based on their area of interest. And I often say skills pay bills. So if you go to college, we talked about this at lunch, my friends in the back. If you go through one of those career academies and you obtain an industry certification and you go on to college in maybe a similar field or even another field, you can work using that industry certification while you're in college and make money so that you're not acquiring a lot of student loan debt. So there's a lot of benefits of those programs. The other thing is I have visited school districts on the east coast of Florida in particular that are integrating their academics through their career and technical education programs at the high school level. And it's fascinating because kids are, again, they're learning algebra through their automotive tech programs. I mean, and what the kids will tell me when I've toured those programs, we love school. Like, the kids didn't want to leave, and they were inventing things like mobile document tools that business partners were purchasing. I mean, the kids were inventing these things, and they were engaged in classes because no longer was it this stand and deliver and just tell me and disseminate information. It was hands-on. They were connected to it because it was in their area of interest. And I'll say one last thing since I don't have the red side yet.
You're fine.
We
We're doing well we care about overall time too, so you're doing well.
Okay, all right. I get very passionate and excited about the career and technical education programs. Okay, all right, y'all will be my, all right. We would annually hold a career and technical education showcase. And what was neat about this was
This is in Hernando.
this is in Hernando and in Martin County. Actually, I brought the idea with me. And so what's neat about this is it gives families in the community, whether it's 8th graders who are getting ready to program plan to go into high school, or just families that are interested in learning more about what we do at the high school level. But we bring our career and technical education academies to a central location. We call it the CTE Showcase, and students run their areas and they do demonstrations, and other students and families come and talk to them about, well, what is it like to be in this program, and what do you acquire once you finish, and those types of things. So we've connected that to guidance counselors who were there to answer questions, administrators too, and it's been really neat to watch that grow, because now it's getting somewhat competitive, and now principals want to add additional CTE programs to their schools because they see the value for students. So it's really taken off in a way to showcase and to help to inform families to make good decisions about high school.
Tim?
Okay, so as you know, in Osceola County, as like every other district, the taxpayers make a significant investment in education. And it's realized through all the budgets that we all have to work through, including ours. But at the same time, we have a limited amount of resources that we have available to us. And we have a high degree of responsibility and accountability of how we utilize those resources to accomplish what overall mission and vision is. So the question I would have is, how would you work to balance the idea of honoring that responsibility when it comes to the budget and the resources that are entrusted to us, while also making sure that we strive and achieve our goal for academic excellence?
Mm-hmm.
And how would you reconcile a conflict that may arise from time to time in that arena when we say we want to achieve this, but yet our resources say we can only do this?
Mm-hmm. It goes back to the way that you establish the foundation of your strategic plan. So if you establish that with your community and with your stakeholders, and you do that really well, then because that defines what it is you're about, and it drives all of your work, right? So you start out that way, and then you continuously communicate back out what the stakeholders are receiving in the school district. You have to market and promote the good work that goes on. And I think you have to be really transparent and honest about it too. So I think, number one, it's the way that you lay that groundwork. There's always going to be competing priorities. So the recess issue right now is huge, and we've talked about that a lot. We have recess at our elementary schools, and so I don't know where y'all stand on that, and that's a conversation for another day. We won't get into that, it's a hot topic, but if you are transparent about where you're at with your resources to people, and you talk about when you're making budgeting decisions, here's what we agreed on in our strategic plan. Now you're saying you want recess. Well, if you want recess, this is going to take this amount of money, and I'm just using it as a hypothetical. Then it may mean that this needs to come off the table. And budgeting is just about prioritizing. You only have so much in the well to take from. And if you do that with your community and you're really honest and transparent and you communicate, relentlessly communicate, you can bring your community along in understanding how their dollars are being spent. So, for instance, one of the things that just happened for us is we had a half-cent sales tax referendum that passed in September. It's $8.5 million per year for our district in capital funding. And what we've done is we've established a half-cent sales tax citizen oversight accountability committee that we just received applications for.
They have long terms for things.
Yes, they do.
I'm impressed you can remember them.
But they're key because, and we were, we had people that applied, but we want people on there that were against the half cent because we want them to look at that and critique it, because we want to be transparent to the taxpayers. We want to show them what their money is going towards. So I think those types of committees are key if you're talking about prioritizing and making significant cuts to the budget.
Let me follow up on that if I may, because you address the external component. They go the same route, but talk about the internal component. How do we deal with that with our internal stakeholders, and not necessarily having to communicate it to the public who's making the investment, but those in departments or at school sites that are having to deal with that conflict that may exist as well?
Couple things. I think that you have to have a staff who understands financing and budget. It's key, it drives everything, and you have to educate them. And so we've done a good bit of that. Even top level administrators, I mean, if you think about their training programs, they've had one course in school finance, and it's not specific typically to Florida finance, depending on where they went to school. And so if you can help them to understand that. The other thing is, there are some things that are non-negotiable that the state says you have to fund, and you have to fund it this way, and there's parameters around it. And so you've got to help them to understand that. The other thing I'd like to say is, when you structure your district around shared decision making, and you have mechanisms, meaning groups of people at all levels of your organization that have a voice in being able to share and give input into those decisions. When I have to make a decision now about a hiring freeze, they understand that in January the calculation comes out and it's going to tell us they understand that. They understand the why, because I'm very transparent as a superintendent. I have nothing to hide. This work is all transparent, and as it should be. We're accountable to the taxpayers and the citizens. So I think involving them in those and having structured your organization so that there are those groups of at every level that have a voice, and you can help them to understand. Because, the hardest thing to say to a principal is, I'm sorry you have to lose 4 teachers this year because you don't have the student enrollment, or you have to cut, this, that, or the other. But if you've involved them in that process, you've educated them on financing and budget, and then they've had a voice, they move with you. They move with you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
My turn again. Dr. Romano, describe a time when you collaborated and cooperated with private and public entities. So colleges, universities, county commissions, city councils,
All the time.
community organizations, businesses, professional leaders, or any combination thereof.
All the time, all the
Yeah.
time. I sit on the chamber board.
Oh, great.
I do. I sit on. We have one chamber. Martin County, I think, had 4 when I was there, and I sat on the Economic Development Council as well. I know personally my county commissioners, some better than others. I have monthly meetings with the sheriff. I have meetings with the Ministerial Association. That's been a really helpful partnership for us in terms of helping our homeless population and giving some extra supports to schools. So those relationships are key to the bigger picture of helping a community to move forward and advance. You can't do it without that. So, for instance, this is an example. We only get so much in terms of Safe Schools money, and we have had a contract to have SROs, school resource officers, in our middle schools and our high schools. And what we've done is we've tried to partner now with the county to be able to lease or sell one of our buildings to be able to get some additional funds to be able to add some additional supports in our schools. And that was great because we had a relationship that was built with the county administrator. I can call him and we can have a conversation about that. And having those relationships is key. And I don't know how you could do this work without him. And in Hernando County, we have talked about branding the community as the Adventure Coast. That was what the county has decided to do. Adventure Coast. They used to be the Nature Coast.
Mhm.
They have rebranded themselves as the Adventure Coast. And having something for people to identify around and bringing all of those stakeholders to the table has been integral. In Martin County, we did some cross-collaboration between the county commission and different school boards, even involved some other counties, and we did some of that partnership work together to see, could we partner on a virtual school, which we ended up doing across county lines. And so even outside your immediate community, it's important to continue networking. And working at the State Department for 9 years really helped me, and as a superintendent, has helped me to be able to maintain relationships and to network and to be able to get resources because of that. I have a good relationship with my congressman and my senator. My representative has helped us to get some additional funding for the district last year, some sparsity funding, and so, again, key. And it's not just going to their Christmas gatherings and such. It's really also about the work. So when I'm in Tallahassee this month, I will stop by and we'll have a conversation about our legislative platform and the support they're receiving from our lobbyists and those kind of things as well.
If you don't mind, Chairman, what is Hernando's legislative platform, just briefly?
We we're continuing to focus on the Safe Schools allocation,
Okay.
of course, because it's not enough to maintain our school resource officers, so we have to take from operating. Accountability, we're staying firm with the superintendent's support
Okay.
of strengthening and kind of revamping the accountability system. Sparsity funding, dual enrollment funding is another area where, we're still having to pay that tuition to the state colleges, and that's a very large chunk of money for us, so that's a part of our legislative platform as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jay?
Dr. Romano, simple question. How do you set goals?
Weekly.
Elaborate.
On
Elaborate.
Sundays, I set that, those are my personal goals for the week. And I've helped,
That's good.
I help my staff does that, they do that too, but I establish goals that drive everything I do based on needs that exist, and I have to identify those needs. So, I'm very data-driven, I love data, and I use it. My staff says I drive them crazy with data. Now they've become, and my teachers union president, she doesn't care for data at all, and so she's always being sarcastic with me about, there's a data person, and it's a good relationship. But I think you have to understand, you can't develop a goal without understanding the need that exists that would be able to drive that goal. It's just like when you teach. How do you determine what the essential goal is that you're going to teach students for that day? Well, partly the state standards tell you that you need to adopt that, but also the needs of your students should drive that. If a student's struggling in decoding words, you're going to establish, based on that need, you're going to establish a goal. And that's a very basic example, but whenever data come to me, and the state sends us that information, whether it's retakes and course exams, my data person knows. I have a manager of assessment accountability. She sent it to me because she knows I love it, and I review it, and then I immediately bring people together. If it was our Algebra 1 scores is an example, we brought our high school principals together, and I said, I want an action plan. If it's internal account procedures, if that information comes to me, and I've got some schools that have issues with their internal accounts, and I can see that for 4 or 5 years they've had the same issues, you're going to develop a corrective action plan, and we're going to work through that together, and you're going to receive support, and it needs to be corrected. It can't come up in an audit report again. And so that's how I would establish goals, based on needs that exist from data and elements that I'm given, or seek out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have been at this just about an hour. We've got another 30 minutes to go, and we'll have some random questions here. But before we go there, would anybody like to take a 5-minute
Let's do that.
break?
So when we return, we'll
Okay.
ask,
We'll
we're
return.
going, if anyone has a
Yeah,
follow-up.
yeah,
we'll
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you.
5 minutes to sign up?
No red.
Well, it's only really red if you really
I know,
don't
Joe
want it.
doesn't.
Okay.
They're very flexible.
Joe doesn't like data, I know that. I do, I like data.
Is we'll kind of go round robin again, just like it's kind of the same order we've been. If people have questions based on comments you just made or anything, or anything actually. But, Mr. Soto, do you have anything, or do you want to?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And I will refer to the question as well. I try to make it relevant to something that was already brought up. Here, it was, I'm sorry, it's,
That's the page I was looking at. You know it's right.
all right, it was a question by Ricky Booth, the first one.
He's picking on you.
Ricky Booth.
Love it.
The question was this, all right? It was describe what you believe to be the ideal working relationship with a school board. How is this ideal relationship achieved and maintained? Should you have an adversarial?
Yes.
You really wanted that question? I'm going to change it now.
I don't think I ever got to the adversarial part, did I?
You didn't.
That is his question, I
And
think.
you look, and that's, you can pass it and I'll have a
That's
second
good.
one if
Good.
you want.
No, I'll be glad to address it. It's, for us to sit at a table together and think that that's never gonna happen is unrealistic. It's going to happen. And I think if you start out, as I mentioned in the response, if you start out with educating the board when they come on and helping them understand, you partner with the Florida School Boards Association and you go through some of those certification trainings. Master Board is a training that our board just went through. And you have good communication mechanisms. And adversarial relationships typically happen when there is a difference of opinion or agreement on something. And so my goal would be for us to work through some of those 7 habits types of things where we can create win-win situations and agree to disagree and sometimes walk away because we can't come to some kind of conclusion that is going to create a win-win, because ultimately when one of us loses, we all lose and it impacts. And I think sometimes we forget that because we get so caught up in our own position that what we're doing and how we're behaving actually impacts children. So I typically, when I have an issue with a board member, I meet with my board members on off board week, so every other week. I talked about the method for doing that varies. Some board members just like to talk by phone and others like to actually have a face-to-face. And that offers board members an opportunity to ask questions, gain additional information about agenda items or issues that are happening, but also to talk about concerns that they have, whether it be something that they heard that I did. And a lot of times there's perceptions that board members hear from somebody that they trust. And the hope is that the superintendent and the board members can establish a really strong, united relationship that's going to move the district forward, and there's trust that's built. It's all grounded in trust. And trusting that the intent of the superintendent is always going to be good, no matter what. And if there is this perception that's created by a constituent or somebody that board member trusts, talking through it and problem solving. Oftentimes what I'll say is, what is the solution that you would like? Is it reasonable, and is it something that we can actually do? Is it legal? Is it reasonable that we can actually do? Is it something that is in the best interest of a child or a family? And trying to problem solve around that. But adversarial relationships they happen. And my hope is that we don't dig our heels in and we try to work together in the best interest of the district. And I do that through a lot of communication, reaching out, because sometimes the door gets closed and they're like, I'm going to cross my hands and dig my heels in, and I just keep reaching out and saying, can we talk about this? Let's come together and have a conversation about that. Our board members have developed a mechanism for having informal meetings, and that's similar to a board workshop, but they just come together informally around a table once a month. And they can talk, there's no agenda items, they can talk about in the sunshine, whatever it is that they would
These
like
are
to talk about at the
published,
time.
noticed.
They're published notice meetings. And they just started those in Alachua County. We learned from the School Boards Association, Alachua County used to have these and they found them to be very productive. Our master board trainer actually helped us to think through this. And part of that's been really beneficial to the board because they're not just specific things that the board chair and the superintendent decide are going to be on a workshop agenda. there are things that the board just really wants to talk through, and that's helped somewhat. This work is not just about people liking the superintendent. The superintendent oftentimes has to make very difficult decisions, and I think that oftentimes there's a perception that the superintendent does that in isolation, and that couldn't be further from the truth in our district. We make those decisions as a team. I, along with my staff, in particular personnel decisions, and that's typically where it gets sticky. A board member may want you to hire their daughter or friend's daughter or get them into a magnet school, or these are the things that come up. And again, I know what I stand for in terms of my own principles, and my moral compass is very strong, and I stand for that. And if I have to say no, I have to say no, because I'm not going to ever put myself or my district or my board in a situation where because once you do it, you set precedent, and then everybody thinks that they can, manage and use you that way to make those kind of decisions.
Thank you.
If y'all don't mind, I've got two questions. One of them's almost a yes or no, though. You talked about your budget advisory group. Are those school district employees, or is that a community group?
They include both. They include
Okay,
lead principals.
but it's outside people too?
Outside
Okay.
people as well, absolutely.
Okay. My other question was on your strategic plan. I read this in your paperwork, and I was pretty intrigued by it, and you mentioned it today. Just tell me a little bit about how you tie your strategic plan to the agenda.
The board agenda?
Yeah, what do you kind of have to, what do you do? I mean, is it just noted, this is plan number 2? Or how-
When we used to use an e-agenda system, we've now moved to a new system called Minute Track, and we're just kind of getting used to that system. But when staff members create an agenda item, there's a place in there, a drop-down menu with all of the strategic plan focus areas. And so what we can do is we can go back and pull information on all strategic focus area number 1, for instance, all the agenda items that have been tied to that one area, and then we can see what amount of money's been spent on it. So that's the way that we do it. Having a system, an online, helps a
I think
lot.
that sounds really cool. I like that, that idea.
Yeah. We felt accountable too. We felt accountable, and that's why we set up that
Yeah,
system.
I like, let's say, I was really intrigued when I read your paperwork, and then when you mentioned it, it kind of made me think about it.
Okay. I want to touch on culture, and you've alluded to it a couple of times in the conversation, the answers we've gone through, but it's something that's important to me personally. It's something that's important to this board, and it's something that's been important to our current superintendent. And to be honest, it's been something we've been working very diligently on here in Osceola County, is to make sure that we have a positive culture and a positive environment. There's always challenges, there's always things to overcome, but I'd like to hear from you, and you moving into the role of superintendent in Osceola County, how you would go about building the right culture as you came into this district.
It's extremely important to me as well. It's who I am as a leader, and I don't think you can move a district forward without having really good culture. And so some of the things that I would do based on who I am as leader, and then also the experiences that I've had, is number 1, I think that you've had some changeover in superintendents in the past, but what Superintendent Luciano, from my understanding, has been able to do is really provide some stabilization in terms of culture, and that's significant. When you can have consistency at the top level, it stabilizes it for staff, because anytime there's a change, it's really, really hard on staff. So I think that understanding that's the place that you're at. That's why applying for this position was very appealing to me, because of who I am as a leader and knowing where you were at with stabilizing your district in terms of culture. The other thing is, I think it's really important in a new superintendent, and I've done it all 3 years I've been a superintendent, is that you are very visible and you have an open door philosophy. That's key, because the minute you become a closed system, which the system, as I interviewed people when I first went into the district, it was business partners would say it was a closed system. They couldn't gain access. There wasn't an open door to do things. Now, whether that was their reality or whether it was perception is reality. So I would be very visible. I would understand the culture as it exists, and then meet with lots of people initially, and you would see this in my 100-day entry plan that I would share. So you would know very clearly as a board and a community what steps I was going to take. The other thing I think is really important in terms of creating culture is creating those layers of that system of this shared decision making. So we were invited to Montgomery County, Maryland. It's a very high performing district, and we did this through the National Education Association. We were selected as one of the 40 districts that could attend, and it was called Organizing to Lead. They've spent 10 years structuring their district around organizing to lead. And what that is it's shared decision making where people at every level have a voice. And so we've structured it's taken us, a year and a half, but we really have, I even have an organizing to lead team at the superintendent level. And the purpose of that is, number one, to be transparent about everything that's happening, but the people around the table get to help in making decisions. So the superintendent's organizing to lead shared decision-making team would focus on things that were bigger picture things, that were systemic, things that really were going to impact the entire system. And so we've got that at the superintendent level, we've got it at the executive director level, we've got our school-based teams each have a shared decision-making team. And when you hear them present, you realize that the culture is changing because now they have buy-in, and they're just, they believe in Hernando. They believe in it. And I think that's, you have a great foundation now with the stability that's been provided. It's now, how do we take it and move the district even beyond? Because it's a great time to be in Osceola County. You're growing. You've got some great things happening with the manufacturing and the medical. You've got the employee medical. You've got some great things happening. And so now it's, how do you take that culture? Well, a new leader coming in is going to have to spend the time to build relationships, to build trust, to have that open door policy, and honestly, to be a people person. You have to love people, and I do. That's probably the thing I love most about the job is the people. When I stand and present to groups, I do not like standing behind a podium a lot of times because I want to be there with them, and I'll say that to them. And we've built that kind of culture with the community there.
Appreciate it.
I've got two questions, if you'll indulge me. One is, you've touched on 7 habits several times during this interview. My children actually attend a school here in our district that has adopted the 7 habits and is they are a lighthouse
Yes,
school.
the Harmony K-8.
Yes.
Yes,
And all
I've
three
researched it.
of my children attend there, and I think they do some great things there. I think it's really helped. I would love them to add an 8th habit for kids, which is no whining. But that was not on there.
There is a real 8th habit. That's not it.
Some adults need that too.
Sorry, but I had to throw that in. But I would like you to expand a little bit, if you may, on the how you've implemented that at the district level.
Yes,
and how you
absolutely.
can implement it all the way down through.
Absolutely. That is something that is really important to me. And so we went through this organizing to lead training up in Maryland. We came back immediately, and we had developed an action plan. We had a team up there, and we brought together people from each one of our schools, and we helped to gear them up and build capacity for the shared decision making as well. And got that system in place. That was kind of the big picture thing, where now we have the mechanisms in place. And what if you were to visit my district, one of the things you would hear is they very clearly understand that my vision and my mission is to become an A-rated school district of excellence. I believe it. No matter where I go, I say it, and now my people are saying that. And so we focused on the excellence part because we know what defines an A-rated district, but how do you get to the excellence piece? And so the 7 habits, we have one of our low performing middle schools, Fox Chapel Middle School, that was implementing the Leader in Me, which is what Harmony K-8 Community School is implementing. They're a lighthouse school, I believe.
Yes.
And I learned a lot about their work, had their students come and do a 7 Habits training. The students, the Lighthouse team there came and did a training for the board. And what we said is, in order to be excellent, we needed the tools to help people to function from a set of principles that would move us towards being excellent and effective. And so what we've done is, and we've had limited money to do it, but we've figured out a way, because I don't think money should ever be a barrier to accomplishing greatness, even though sometimes it gets in our way. We have to think outside the box. And so what we've done is last summer, after getting all the organizing to lead stuff in place and shared decision-making structures, we trained all of our administrators during their summer leadership academy. All of the executive leaders and the principals and the assistant principals. And right now what we're doing is we're training the support staff, and our plan is to implement the 7 habits at every single level, including the board members, so they will receive training as well. I'm pretty excited about that.
We're not trainable.
No, they're not.
Got some bad habits.
We
You
have
need
7
a
bad
behavior
habits.
intervention plan? Okay. So,
Functional behavioral assessment.
functional behavioral assessment for them?
Inappropriate
I see.
behavior.
I have to put my special ed hat on. So, we're really excited about the 7 habits, and I'm really glad you asked about it. And what's neat is we hold a monthly recognition for staff members who have exhibited one of the habits. So we just got finished with proactivity, being proactive. And so, just to see people using common vocabulary around it and practicing it, and it's only going to grow.
I really do believe it's helped my children in their educational process. And so it was interesting to hear you have had it on a district level. Are you done with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I ask do we have time? How are we on time? I'll skip my last question.
It's okay, because I got.
Is it a long one?
You go, we'll cut him off.
I'll get it, no, I'm gonna get
No,
indulged.
just briefly, I'm in the agricultural profession. It's still second largest industry in our county, also our heritage industry. And I brought this up in the first interview, but Orange County, who has a much smaller agricultural footprint than we do, has a much larger education program, especially in their high schools. And I know that budget is a problem, but what are your thoughts on agricultural education, the opportunities we see there, biotechnology, agribusiness, things like this? How would you maybe implement some agricultural education?
First, let me say this. I think it's really wonderful that that's your background and you have passion around bringing that to the table, because I think that one of the things that you consider when you start thinking about future work is you need to build capacity in that area, and clearly that's an area in Florida and in Osceola in particular that has a need for people to do that work. And I went to a high school that had a strong agricultural program, still does, and in fact my niece just graduated. It's been 4 years now, but she graduated from that program. And Martin County also had an agriculture program. So I think that you have to have the vision, first of all, which you do, and the passion, and now it's just finding the resources and building the pipeline of students, because it takes time to recruit students into that.
Absolutely.
But we're here in this area, so it'd be very easy to do.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Jay.
I got a couple of questions for you. Explain, obviously you've been in a leadership position, so explain a time where and when, one or more times, where you've dealt with an inexpert expert in public education and what you did or what should have happened.
This is all the time, so I'm trying to think of a very specific example, and I don't mean that.
We don't need names.
So yeah, just give me an example or two and what should have happened or what didn't happen or what should have, et cetera.
Impugning someone in their professional work is defamatory per se, although we have
No names.
we have governmental privileges here, but not naming people would be a good idea.
Well, let me just say this. Many people think that they're an expert in education because they've all received education and they've gone through being educated. Okay? Okay, so the way I approach that, and I deal with this a lot when I have town hall meetings in particular, because you'll get people that will come and I love to do those because it gives me a chance to educate if people are willing to listen. So I'm going to use an example of a situation we had last year at one of our elementary schools. We had a discussion around closing that school because of all of the capital improvements to the infrastructure. It was an older aging school. There were, significant leak issues. And so you had people from the community that would come that were experts in roofing and wanted to get up on the roof and fix the roof. So the way that we handled that, the way that I handled that was to listen, seek first to understand their position, and then to help them to educate. Government processes can be very convoluted for people that have not done this work, and so you can't just put somebody on a roof to repair it because they're a roofer, during the day. And so the way I approach that is, number one, listen first, and then really help to educate and move those people forward with us. And oftentimes, what has happened in that situation in particular is the school didn't close. It was a neighborhood school, and the community was a great community that came together, and we problem solved around how can we make this happen, and planned it out so it could happen during the summer. Of course, my wonderful principal that I have there's still construction going on because you know how construction can be. But the bottom line is, most people think that they're experts in education, and they're not. And so you have to put on your educator-teacher hat, which I do a lot.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
And you have to be very firm and direct in a very professional way. This role requires a high level of resolve and professionalism and the ability to really listen.
Let me ask you, okay, let me rephrase it. Can you answer that question within the context of curriculum?
Oh my gosh, yes I can.
Okay?
Okay. This is a good one too. So, in our district, we have a group of parents who have gotten together, and they are very concerned about the math fluency formative assessments that we're giving in their time, and they're new this year. And so they've come to the board meetings and they've said, we're psychologically traumatizing children because they are being timed on these fluencies. So what we did is we met with them. Staff did. They went out to the school. They held a parent night. So it was coming mainly from one of our locations. Met with the group of families to help them to understand why it is we're doing math fluency. It wasn't because we wanted to time children and we wanted to put a grade to it.
Was this elementary?
This was elementary.
Okay.
This was elementary. So that's one example. Too much testing has come up, and that's a difficult one to handle at times for staff, because so many of the tests that we are required to give were required by the state to be able to do that. And so, again, it's educating them to help them understand what are we required to do and we are mandated to do versus what are we deciding locally and what do we have the ability to kind of change and do differently. If it's district-created assessments, can we give those up? And if so, what happens when we give those up?
Okay, let me ask, but you're talking about testing, let's get to that. First off, two-part question. What do you think of, and do you have any experience with STAR testing, number one, but the other piece of it is, going under the premise that the Florida Association of District School Superintendents, which sent the letter, which holds the current Florida State assessments as highly suspect, okay? And you don't get it in a timely manner. What nationally recognized assessments do you think, without testing and testing and testing ad nauseum, but you got to measure, do you think should be used for diagnostic purposes in elementary and middle, high school? It might be 2-3 different tests. I don't know. What do you think we should be using, that we're not using it, that you are using, that you find effective, that you can then benchmark against other districts with?
Mm-hmm. Let me say this about testing first. Testing is not bad. We've been doing testing for
Forever.
testing in itself, and right, exactly, for eons. But what has happened is we've lost the purpose of testing. People now it just becomes testing is bad. Testing in and of itself is not bad. You just it has to have meaning and purpose and how you use it, right? And so what we have found is we have some tools that we use to progress monitor. iReady is one of the tools that we find our teachers and our administrators find very effective, and they find it effective because they can use the information to drive their instruction, to change their instruction and adapt and intervene really early with children. So that's a tool that we have found effective. The other thing that we have worked with teachers, groups of teachers that teach common courses, to come together and develop not only curriculum maps, which map out there, but also to develop those formative and summative assessments that go along with those. And so they're not perfect yet, but as we roll forward, we've got great teachers. Teachers are the experts in a lot of ways, in their content areas in particular. And so they are not test developers, so you have to partner them with people that can say, this STEM needs to be this way, the reliability and validity need to be this way. And so my whole point in saying that is teacher-created benchmark assessments have worked really well for us, and they've helped to really guide instruction and to stay in line with where we're at with those curriculum maps that we've put together. It is not a perfect world
Any opinion on
yet.
STAR testing?
I know of STAR testing in terms of it's a diagnostic reading assessment that usually is used as a screener from what I understand, but there's many diagnostic assessments in particular that intensive reading teachers use, but also speech and language pathologists are really good at understanding how to diagnose reading difficulties. And a lot of times you'll see in school districts, they'll partner a speech and language pathologist with elementary teachers to be able to support them in providing better reading instruction, intensive reading instruction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kelvin, you have anything else?
No, I do not.
Real briefly, you mentioned town halls, just real briefly. How well attended are they and how contentious can they become?
Come to mind.
I did 3 town halls in 2014, and I did them at different locations throughout the community. We had a good percentage of people who came to a location. It was our Parrott Middle School location, which is out in a very rural part of the community. So we were really surprised by that. But what we found was it was the leader of that campus who was connected to the community, who did all kinds of things to make sure that people were there. It was how we marketed it based on how those people in that community received information. So it was very well attended there. At our other locations, not as much. We are, I think I said this in one of my responses, I'm getting ready to do community conversations to serve as a springboard on visioning for the next strategic plan cycle. I'm doing that next week, and we're using a different model for that. What I'll do is I'll do a state of the district presentation for the group to kind of say this is where we're at, and then we've developed some guiding questions for people to kind of go and with a facilitator and talk through, what are the things that you see as challenges and what's really working and where do you see education in this community at in 5 years? Where do you want it to be? But what we did strategically is we invited about 25 community members to be a part of that. So they got invitations to be a part of it so that we know that there are going to be at least 25 people there. And then we've marketed it dramatically different. We've marketed it through our Facebook page, through our Twitter page, through our website. We've made global connect calls to our families, and then sending information home through children.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And contentiousness, I have not had one yet. That doesn't mean to say that people have not challenged me
Sure.
with ideas or where they think, and I enjoy that because it gives me an opportunity to really, number one, get to know them, but also to just say, this is what we're about and this is what we stand for, and we're really transparent about our work. So come be a part of what we're trying to do to make it better.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
That kind of concludes our question portion. Do you have any comments, questions for us, or anything we did not address you'd like to share with us before we close? Are you good?
No, I'm really good. I think you have some great things happening in this community.
We agree.
I think that you, again, have done a great job at organizing this process and leading this work and really investing the time to be able to make this hard decision that you're about to make. And I commend you for that. And so I look forward to hearing from you and to meeting with you each individually next week and to, oh, did I say next week? My nerves, I guess, my nerves. Tomorrow, to meeting with you individually tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to that. Those will be good opportunities for us to have some additional conversation. So, thank you.
We thank you for participating in the process.
Absolutely.
And being interested in
Absolutely.
being superintendent in Osceola County and your time. We
Absolutely.
know, we recognize that it's difficult and very time consuming to do this process, so thank you for the effort you put towards that.
You're welcome.
And just to make sure the timeline is clear, we meet next Tuesday, the 19th, and we will decide as a board at that point. So
Very good.
while it's been long, we're at this point,
No, it's been good. It's been very good, and
finish it up.
I think you've handled it well. So.
No questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moore.
No, the only question I had for you all, and my tour guides helped me to answer this today, was, I really wanted to hear about some things that you were really proud of, and you've got a great community, so I really was. But maybe we can talk about that as a part of our individual meetings
Sure.
tomorrow.
Absolutely.
We're happy to share.
There's a Harmony Celebration High School basketball game without front of that.
Love it. Just saying.
Great announcement.
Well done, man.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
See
It
you.
was a
Good
pleasure
job.
meeting
Good
you.
job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Romano, thank you.
Thank you,
Look
Jay.
forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Soto.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it.